Hi, I'm starting a brand new short story, and this one has a real twist to it. I've called the story Fake or Messiah, and the story is set a short while after the death and resurrection of Jesus, and the twist is I've transported the people from that time forward to our time. A time of fake news, social media, biased media, and all the rest, and placed them in a modern television studio. Now this is going to take some imagination on both of our parts, combining the people of Jerusalem, Galilee and Nazareth in their robes, sandals and their headgear, and a modern television studio. So just bear with me as I set the scene. We're in Jerusalem, the city's in turmoil. Followers of Jesus, they're in the first stages of becoming his church. And the religious leaders of the time are doing their best to stop this movement in its tracks. Both sides are on a collision course, both convinced that they are right. And the broadcasters see this as the perfect opportunity to stir them all up and in the process boost their own ratings. Now it's mid-afternoon and queues are formed outside the television studios, which are located just outside the city walls of Jerusalem. Now, as you can imagine, there's excited chatter from the people. They're all looking forward to tonight's programme as they queue up. Not too long ago, Jesus passed this way on his journey into the city, riding a donkey. They could all remember that day when they cheered him loudly and they covered the route with their clothes and with palm leaves. But now, even this line of people are sharply divided in their views on Jesus of Nazareth. Now soon, the doors of the studios are flung open and they make their way past security guards into the studio. And the first thing that strikes them is all the bright lights. And then they see the cameras that will catch every word and every expression during the programme. They file in, and once the audience have been seated, they see in front of them a semicircular stage that is split down the centre with a gap of about 2 metres. And participants for this evening's programme will enter into the studio through that narrow gap. The first group of participants do enter the studio. There are about 30 of them, and they're obviously ordinary people. They file in hesitantly, looking around at the scene confronting them. They seem a little taken aback by the size of the audience and the brightness of the lights and the cameras pointing towards them. They take their seats on the left-hand side of the stage. Next to enter, through the gap, is a solemn procession of religious leaders in their fine robes, and they all have this look of superiority. Now they're well used to being in the limelight. This group are instantly recognised by the audience. They're seen most days in the temple or walking through the narrow streets of Jerusalem. They are the celebrities of the day. And a murmur is heard as the audience spot one or another who they know. The religious leaders take their seats on the right-hand side of the stage. All the participants are now in place and an announcement is made. Quiet in the studio. 20 seconds before we go live. We're now 10 seconds from going live. Cue applause tape. 5, 4, 3, 2. Cue music. 1. Studio, we are now live. The presenter steps forward and stands in front of one of the cameras. The man is wearing a dark suit with a white shirt and blue tie. His grey hair is perfectly groomed and his teeth are just a bit too white. His face has a golden tan, the sort that comes from spending time in a tanning salon. The man's appearance is in direct contrast with the Galilean fishermen and shepherds, whose hair is unkempt and faces are tanned, not from a sunbed, but from the harsh reality of spending their working life under the sun of the Holy Land. Their faces bear the deep crevices and lines, hands that are rough and stained, all a testimony to the honest, hard-working life that they lead. He steps forward and says, "Good evening to you, the viewers, and also the audience here in the studio. Tonight we will be talking about the new way and asking the question, Jesus of Nazareth, fake or Messiah?" Let me first of all introduce our panel of experts, consisting of both Pharisees, Sadducees, and also scribes, who will be able to guide us through what is written in the scriptures. There's then canned applause. The audience look around, baffled. They're not clapping. Where's this applause coming from? And over on this side of the audience, we have people who believe that Jesus of Nazareth is indeed the Messiah. There's total silence. For viewers at home, you can get involved this evening on all social media platforms. Let us know your thoughts on what is being said. Also, as always, we will be taking your votes during the broadcast, so just follow the details that are appearing along the bottom of your screens. Do not forget we will be keeping details of how you vote on our database. So, let's go to our experts and ask them, what do they make of the new way, which appears not to align itself with the scriptures as we know them? The first person to speak is a rather grand-looking man. He's a Pharisee. He's wearing a long white robe, a blue and white headpiece, and leaning on a stout wooden staff. He stands and he looks around the studio before speaking. He says, "This has got to be stopped. It goes against everything that the scriptures of Moses tells us. God has appointed people like myself to his temple to administer his people and his laws. Why would he send a Messiah who is quite obviously a rebel and who taught against the scriptures? It makes no sense. I tell you, it has to stop before God turns his back on us, his chosen people, and does it once again." The Pharisee sits back in his seat as the experts give him a round of applause. The compere crosses the studio floor and addresses the non-experts. Well, that point from our expert seems clear-cut to me, especially when he says God will turn his back on us, his chosen people. Who would like to respond to those points? Lots of hands go up. And the compere picks a man sat a few rows back. Judging by his clothes, he's obviously not a man of means. but he addresses the audience in a clear, confident voice. Sir, I met Jesus and I know he is the Messiah. Well, how so? Well, look at my skin. What do you see? What about the sores running down the length of my arms? And the fingers on both hands rotting away. The compere looks intently at the man's arms, as do the experts, and they see nothing. Is this man deluded? The compere says, Sir, I see nothing. Perhaps you're mistaken? No, I'm not mistaken, because when I met Jesus, my arms were covered in sores and my fingers were rotting away. I'd lost everything. I'd lost my family. I'd lost my business. I could not even enter the synagogue. I was an outcast, from whom you called the chosen people. I was a leper. The compere seems to back off from being anywhere near the man who kept speaking. Jesus invited me back into the chosen people, and only he had the means of doing that. Jesus came to our city and was passing by the place where I would spend most days. So I threw myself at his feet and said to him that if he was willing, then he could make me clean. Jesus then touched me and said, I am willing, be cleansed. Instantly, my leprosy disappeared. Why don't you come over and touch my arm? The man had said this to many people, and nobody, including the compere, had ever taken him up on the offer. Perhaps they believed that he wasn't healed completely. The man didn't really care. He knew that he was clean, and the Messiah had done that for him. Would any of the experts like to comment on that? One of the scribes got to his feet and said that being cleansed of leprosy was not proof that Jesus of Nazareth was the Messiah. In fact, God had laid down strict instructions, one of which was that lepers could not touch anyone. So, would the Messiah defy God's instructions? The compere holds a finger to his ear and looks straight into the camera. First votes are coming in from Nazareth. Yes, and it's clear majority against one of their own. And on Twitter, Reuben says, what proof is there that it was leprosy in the first place? Well, thanks for that, Reuben. I will ask the man himself. The man doesn't wait for the compere to ask the question. He says, talk to the priest. He threw me out of the city stating that I had leprosy. And he was the one who declared me clean. The people sitting around the man smiled at the compere's discomfort. If the camera had been on the scribes, it would have picked out one of them who also had a glimmer of a smile on his face. He was biding his time before he chose to speak. He knew that he had to time his intervention to perfection. And that's where I finish part one of the short story. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope it's encouraged you to come back next time and hear part two of Fake or Messiah. Thank you, goodbye, and God bless.